Welcome back to another lesson. We continue with financial management, and in our revision series, today we are doing question number 5. This is a question that was done in April 2023, and the first part A reads as follows. Distinguish between hard behavior and anchoring bias as they are used in behavioral finance. So let's get the difference between hard behavior. This is hard behavior and anchoring finance and anchoring bias as used in behavioral finance. So let's get the difference between these two. So I'll start with anchoring bias. Anchoring bias is a behavioral finance. Is a behavioral finance. Is a behavioral finance. Is a behavioral finance that is used to describe an irrational bias towards an arbitrary benchmark figure. Towards an arbitrary benchmark figure. In this case, we are saying that this benchmark then skews making it skews the decision. You see, you are saying that anchoring bias is where that you have irrational bias towards arbitrary benchmark, and then this benchmark skews decisions. This benchmark skews decision. But when you're talking about the hard behavior, this happens when investors follow other people, follow what they're hearing, follow other rather than making their own, decisions. They just hear. It's a hard behavior. They just hear from others rather than making their own decision on financial matters. So that is the difference between these two. We are saying that anchoring bias is a behavioral finance term that is used to describe an irrational. When you see something is irrational, it's something that is not correct. Something that is not making sense. It's an irrational bias towards an arbitrary benchmark, and then this benchmark then skews the decision. The decision made as a result of this are in line in one direction. When we say skewed, means that they are either pushed towards one end than the other. So that is it. That is the difference between hard behavior and anchoring bias. We move to the next question. You are told to outline 6 steps involved in personal financial management. What are the steps in personal financial management? One is set financial goals. Set financial goals. That is the first step. Then create a budget. Create a budget. Once you create a budget, build an emergency fund. Build an emergency fund. 3. Manage debt. Manage debt. 4. Save and invest. Save and invest. Then the last stage is review and adjust. Review and adjust. So basically, those are the steps we follow when you want to manage your own funds. When you're talking about personal financial management, is when you want to manage your own finances. In order to manage your own finances, you need to follow these steps. We move on to the next question. You're told that the following financial statement data relates to Bamako Limited for the year ended that 1st December 2022. You have the inventory, opening balance, ending balance, trade receivables, trade payables, credit sales, cost of goods sold, and the year is assumed to have 365 days. You are told compute the net operating cycle. Compute the net operating cycle. The first thing you need to do before even computing is get to know how do you work out net operating cycle. Once you understand how to work out this one, the rest will be substitution. Here, net operating cycle, you need to look at inventory holding period, plus debtors collection period, then you minus creditors, creditors collection period. So we start by looking at the first one, inventory holding period. Inventory holding period. Inventory holding period should be average inventory divided by cost of goods sold times 365. So in this case, we shall have 4,000 plus 4,600 divided by 2, everything divided by 40,000 then multiply by 365. This will give you that 9.24 days. This will give you that 9.24 days. Then we look at debtors collection period. Debtors collection period, we look at average debtors divided by credit sales times 365. You shall have 5,000 divided by 50,000 times 365. This one is going to give us 36.5%. So How do we get purchases here? For us to get the creditors period. Purchases, you get cost of sales minus opening inventory plus closing inventory. In this case, we shall have 40,000 plus 4,600 minus 4,000. So our purchases becomes 40,600. So if this is our purchases, we can now get creditors period. And this becomes 3,400 divided by 40,000 divided by 40,600 times 365. This will give us 30.57. This one was days, not percentage. Debtors correction period is in days. So 30 point, this will give us 30.57. Finally, we now get our net operating cycle. Net operating cycle, we go to 39.24, the first one, plus 36.50 minus 30.57. This will give us 45.17 days. That is our net operating cycle. Yeah, that is how to find. You see, before you find this, you need just to know what are your formulas. Once you identify your formulas, the rest becomes a substitution. Let's go to part D. Part D, you are told about John Osoro has deposited 700,000 in a saving account at an interest rate of 5% compounded monthly with additional deposit of 10,000 per month. And this is made at the end of each month. You are told you determine the value of the investment after 10 years. Yes, we're interested to know the value of investment after 10 years. John Osoro has gone to a bank and he has deposited 700,000 into account, and it has an interest of 5% compounded interest monthly. So we are told with additional deposit of 10,000 per month. Yeah. Additional interest is, so annual interest rate is 5%. Let's agree on that. Annual interest rate is 5%. So we need to get monthly interest rate. Monthly interest rate, you take annual interest rate divided by 12. So monthly interest rate, take the annual 5 divided by 12. This will give you 0.42%. Now, the most interesting part here is that there is 700, which is compounded monthly, and additional deposit of 10,000 per month. So there are two items here. The 10,000 is coming monthly, and the 700 is compounded for a period of how many years? 10 years. So 10 years, how many months are there in 10 years? They are 12 months. So 120, 10 times 12 per year. So we shall have the 700,000 compounded at the rate of 0.42, that is 1.0042% power 120, plus the 10,000. Now the 10,000, we use what we call future value interest factor annuity. 10,000 into, how do we find the future value interest factor annuity? Is 1.0042 power 120 minus 1 divided by the rate, which is 0.0042. So the 700,000 after 20 years, it will be 1,157,508.22. But the 10,000 which is deposited monthly, for a period of 120, it shall have 1,556,150.42. When you add these two, you get 2,713,658.64. Now, look at this. This question here is very interesting one, because once you deposit 700,000, this money you are not adding anything again on top of it. That means you are going to compound. You are going to compound the 700,000 for a period of 10 years. But there is 10,000 that you are depositing it every month. Yeah. Then you look for the value of it for a period of 120 years using the financial tables, or you can just look for the future value interest factor annuity. At this point, you multiply by 10,000. It shall give you the value of 10,000 within the 120 years. Look at this point also. You also need to know, if you are depositing 10,000 every month, it means in 10 years, how much will you have deposited? In 1 year, you will have deposited 120,000. So in 10 years, that will be 1.2 million. And that is why you are getting this as 1.5 million. You add the two, and that marks the end of this paper. And this question number 5, that we have gone through it. And we are going to stop there. We meet in our next video. Goodbye.